Hello, figured I might as well do a Fire Mage guide because, well, I had free time and I had some interesting thoughts about pre-patch. So, here is going to be, uh, there's about 4 different builds that you can run. This main one that I'm going to talk about, I'll start with the general tree and then we'll get into the single target and Mythic Plus builds. But for the general tree, much similar to Frost, there's like 4 lock-in points, being the 2 stat increases, Rune of Power, and Temporal Warp versus Time Anomaly, which I'll mention in probably at the end of the video. I'll talk a bit about an interesting little bug. And that's it. Whatever else you take, doesn't matter. Just make sure you take Rune of Power, the 2 stat tomes, and then Temporal Warp or Time Anomaly. As for the builds, we're going to start with single target, and I'm going to mention what Shadowlands Legendary you should run with these. For single target, Fire will be staying Venthyr. For Cleave and AoE, so mainly Mythic Plus, but also some raid bosses or padding on moats, you can play Night Fae. Fire is back to an Ignite spread playstyle, so this is actually almost identical to what your Mythic Plus build will look like, but this is for a single target build. And yeah, you'd play Sun King's Blessing as your equipped Shadowlands Legendary. It's kind of boring, but you're literally just playing Season 4 Fire with Kindling and Pyroclasm at the same time, and that's pretty much it, in addition to having Firestarter. You are playing From the Ashes, which, from my testing and from looking at Dragonflight guides from other fire mages, you still use Phoenix Flames in Combustion even with this. I could be wrong about that, but yeah, from what I've seen, you still use Phoenix Flames in Combust with From the Ashes. You just, like normal, don't use it out of it. That is the only thing I'm not 100% sure on. I know everything else. We're going to talk a bit about rotation changes near the end of the video, though, so keep that in mind. I'll have it pinned in the timeline below. Anyway, first build, you play SKB as your legendary. This is also going to be your main Mythic Plus build, and you're just going to do that. You're going to swap Pyroclasm for Master of Flame. For Mythic Plus, you'll play a BFA style spam Ignite, build Ignite on one target and spread it, and that's what Master of Flame is used for. This does not update dynamically, so it's not like crazy powerful outside of combustion or when combustion ends. So the other build, this one's probably going to be your strongest pure single target build, is going to be actually taking SKB. And when you do that, you're going to be wearing either Disciplinary Command or Fevered Incantation as your equipped Shadowlands Legendary, and that will be a very strong combination. Nothing else really to say here. It's going to almost certainly be your best single target build, running DC with this. The important thing to note here, by the way, I'll cover this more in the conduit section, but taking Controlled Destruction as a talent just nullifies the conduit. So be careful that you're not running the conduit and the talent at the same time. And then this last one is going to be also a single target build where you're taking SKB as your equipped Shadowlands Legendary. Fevered Incantation is the best lead up to a capstone trait, so it's far better than Wildfire and Controlled Destruction, but Hyperthermia is the weakest of these 3. So it's meh. But you also get access to Master of Flame. Then you lose Pyroclasm. So there's a lot of kind of trade-offs here, but this is a strong single target side if you would then wear Sun King's Blessing as your Shadowlands Legendary, and it might be very fun to play with because of Hyperthermia. So I'm suggesting this, even though I do believe the SKB build with Disciplinary Command will be stronger in single target. However, Fated will have a lot of Cleave, and for that you probably want to play Fiery Rush. So yeah, that would be the Fiery Rush build for a Cleave, and then presumably taking Master Flame. Might be worth to just drop something here for Flamestrike when you're doing moats as well. The last build I want to mention is, I already mentioned that the first build I showed was the Mythic Plus build, because Fire is back to the BFA spread Ignite playstyle from one target. This, however, is the build that you should run if that doesn't work. And what I mean by it doesn't work is, supposedly this week is going to be Tyrannical, because last week was Fortified. So if that is the case, it might be very difficult if you're doing something that's not a plus 25 for you to spread ignite without the target dying. And if that is the case, you should just play like you're playing Shadowlands Fire. And if you're doing that, then you want to, take your Flamestrike and Flame Patch talents and then just play like Shadowlands. And that's really all there is to mention about this build. I just recommend it if the mobs are dying too fast for you to spread ignite, and you're getting poor output with the ignite spread build. So, yeah, obviously this is Night Fae. This is going to be the only build that's going to use the Flamestrike talent, or not talent, conduit, whatever it's called, and you will play Sun King's Blessing as your Shadowlands legendary. Alright, so we covered everything. Fiery Rush is the SKB legendary. SKB is going to be running Disciplinary Command or Fevered Incantation. Fevered/Hyperthermia is going to be running SKB as its equipped Shadowlands legendary. And this will be running SKB as its equipped Shadowlands legendary. So now I'm going to transition to talking about conduits for the two covenants. If you've played Fire this expansion, they are the exact same conduits that we've been using for the past 2 tiers. Starting with Venthyr, you can see it's pretty standard. Running Theotar, you'd be playing Infernal Cascade, Controlled Destruction, and Siphon Malice. Infernal Cascade is still active during pre-patch, so your Combust will be disgusting with both Field of Burn and Infernal Cascade active. Siphon Malice just strong all around. And then Controlled Destruction, as I mentioned before, does not work if you have the talented. So make sure you do not have the conduit socketed and the talent at the same time. If you don't talent controlled, or if you don't have the conduit in for Controlled Destruction, Fire's other conduits suck massively. So you would probably play Wasteland Propriety if you had a good T roll, or you just swap to Nadia and play Dauntless Duelist for single target. If this was AoE, you would just play Wasteland Propriety because Dauntless Duelist is nothing valuable. Or you could go Draven and play Built for War in AoE if you aren't using Controlled Destruction. But that situation shouldn't happen from the builds that I described to you. So, yep, same talent build as before. And then Night Fae, Dreamweaver, same deal. Infernal Cascade, you'll play Controlled Destruction if you're running the Ignite spread build with Discipline of the Grove. And if you're running the Flamestrike build I mentioned, instead of Controlled Destruction, you'll have Master Flame. So, as for rotational differences, the only one of note, aside from the fact that if you're playing the Ignite spread build, you just don't Flamestrike in AoE, and you just spread Ignite, but spreading Ignite is your single target playstyle, so you just do your single target rotation in AoE, including your single target combust. The only other one to note is going to be Firestarter. In Raid, when the target is above 90% HP, you will build an SKB and then start your combust with, hardcasting Pyroblast to activate the SKB, activate your combust, and just do the long combust. So that's going to be the only difference in the Raid playstyle. You still, treat Pyroblast like you have, and hardcasting Pyroblast like you have the entire expansion. So try and line up Pyroclasm SKB procs to use at the same time, and it's fine to hardcast them in combustion. But again, try and line them up. I think hardcasting Pyroclasm in combust is a bit of it's like neutral to a slight gain. So if you don't want to do that, you're probably fine not to. And then lastly, I mentioned this, but I hadn't covered it earlier. I want to talk about a little bit of a weird interaction, which I don't think will impact most people, but it does sound kind of fun if you want to try it. So regarding the choice between Temporal Warp and Time Anomaly, they're actually quite close. Temporal Warp will edge itself over just because of the fact that we are in much shorter fights in Raid. And if you're using it on cooldown, it's generally much better than, not much better, it's generally better than Time Anomaly if you're using it on cooldown. However, there's a bit of a weird interaction. And so to know that, you have to know how Time Anomaly works. Time Anomaly cannot proc a buff that you currently have active. And so what I mean by that is if you are in combustion, it cannot give you combustion for 5 seconds. It just doesn't extend combustion. It will give you one of the other two values instead. And so the reason this is important is because when it says or time warp for 6 seconds, what it means is it will give you time warp if you don't have time warp active, but the important caveat to this is it doesn't mean any time warp effect. It specifically means time warp. So if someone else lusts for you, that's a shaman or an evoker, even though they're not out yet, or a hunter, you can still get the lust proc from time anomaly. And when you get that lust proc, it's basically a mini temporal warp for those 6 seconds. And the reason that this is interesting is because you're now in a situation in pre-patch where you can play the SKB build. You can play Time Anomaly, which is very close in damage to Temporal Warp, and you can play Temporal Warp as your Shadowlands legendary and have the potential to have 3 lusts active at once because your Time Anomaly can proc Time Warp and Temporal Warp is a different buff. So yeah, you just have, I don't know however much haste that is, like 140% or something. That's too much. It's like 112, 115. But yeah, so that sounds kind of cool. So if you want to try that out, I'd give that a go. I haven't seen anyone talking about that. So anyway, that is going to be it for this guide. I realize I didn't show any gameplay, but you're just doing single target rotation from Shadowlands, so shouldn't be too bad. It is worth mentioning that if you aren't running Fiery Rush, by the way, it's probably not worth it to wear the Shadowlands bracers, as they do benefit from its, like, they stack basically, so like they gain like 1.5 times value when you're wearing Fiery Rush in Combustion, and even then that was like a very small gain to use in Combustion. So if you're not running Fiery Rush, I would unequip these and put on something else if you have them, but you can keep it on. You know, it's pre-patch, have some fun. So leave any questions you have down below. Hopefully you enjoyed, and hopefully, you know, this wasn't terribly boring because you were just staring at a talent panel the entire time. So have a good day.